everyone. Thanks for joining me for week 5 of learning your 2023-2024 region etudes. I decided to combine the information for weeks 5, 6, and 7 into one video because everything we do for the G major etude this week will apply to the B flat minor etude for next week. Starting with the G major etude, I'm going to take a look at 3 of the more difficult spots and then talk about different ways to practice. And then we'll do the same for the B flat minor etude. The first spot for G major is going to be measure 6, getting down to this low C sharp. The first way to practice this is just do the connection between the D and the C sharp. So I'm going to do this several times. Just make sure that that C sharp comes out when you go from the D. And then once you're comfortable with that, so you're going to play the first 3 notes of every beat without going to the D. Be sure that when you go to the low C sharp, that your flute is not moving on your chin. That'll make it much more difficult because then the air has to change. So it will really help if your thumb is on the back of your flute, pushing the flute forward, not underneath your flute, because then it's very difficult for the hand to move, for the pinky to move to the low C sharp. So the thumb is going to be on the back of the flute, anchoring the flute forward, and try for as little movement as possible from the D to the C sharp. Ideally, you want no movement between those 2 notes. And then once you're comfortable with getting the C sharp, then you can add all the notes in. And be aware that first note of measure 7 is a D sharp, not a C sharp. Another spot to look at in the G major etude is measure 12. We talked about this a little already, but these octaves are tricky. So the first thing to do is just practice the octaves. Being sure that your lips are not pressing together on the high note. It's tempting to squeeze the high note out, but then you hear how that high note is softer than the low note and doesn't match. So you want to actually think lifting the top lip away for the high note so that you have a full-bodied sound on that note. Once you're comfortable doing just the middle note to the top note, I'll add back in the middle note after the top note. So it'll sound so we have 3 notes. And then once you're really comfortable with those octaves, then add the low octave in. Difficult spot in the G major is measure 22, and this is just difficult for the low notes. So what you can do is just isolate the notes that start the beats. So that would be the E, E flat, D, C sharp, and then C at the beginning of measure 23. So that would sound and I'm just tonguing those for now, just so that they start with a clear attack. Once you're comfortable with that, try adding in the note before the low note. So this is going to be C, and then E flat, and then B to D, and then B flat to C sharp, and then A to C. But I'll do that now without tonguing the low note. So encourage you to keep the 1 and 1 B flat in the big beat 3 of measure 22 instead of switching to your B flat thumb key, because you really don't have time to switch to the B flat thumb and then switch back, especially at performance tempo. So it's a little uncomfortable, but just get used to playing the B flat G, B flat without B flat thumb key. Different ways to practice this etude. Once you have the difficult passages under your fingers, you want to start going faster, because we've spent 4 or 5 weeks at a very slow tempo. And the way to do that is going to be to practice with different rhythms, so that you're not just playing through the piece all the way through over and over and over trying to go faster. There are shortcuts that you can do. So one of those shortcuts is to practice with different rhythms. For example, I'm going to go at a slow tempo, about 16th note equals 80 for now, but one rhythm I can do to change it up for my fingers is long first note, short second note within the 16th note beat. So it would sound like this. The benefit of practicing that way is that you teach your fingers to go faster, but not by doing the whole thing faster. You're just going faster every other note. So it's a little more manageable. The way to even that out would now be to play the short note first. So between the 2 notes, it's going to be short, long, short, long, short, long. So this is 16th note equals 80. So now I've practiced the first note short, second note long. The first time it was the first note long, second note short. A totally different way that you can practice this is, instead of changing the rhythm, you can offset the beat. So instead of always having your metronome click on the first note of a group of 2, you can have it so that it clicks on the second note of a group of 2. And this is tricky, but it's a really good way to build a good foundation for your technique. I'm going to move the metronome down to 70, so you can hear that instead of clicking on the first note of a group of 2, it'll click on the second note, on the and of that. I'm going to play for you first the first measure with the metronome clicking on the first note of a group of 2, and then I'll play the first 4 measures with the metronome clicking on the second note of a group of 2, just so you can hear the difference. And now with the metronome on the off beats. This will take a little getting used to, but you can start it slowly so that you can really hear where the offbeats are, and then increase the tempo. That's a really good way to practice if you have an etude like this, where the entire thing is one rhythm. So you don't have to deal with having offbeats, but also having different rhythms. Be sure that when you practice with different rhythms or offsetting the beat, you keep the articulation that's written in the music. It's a little more difficult to do, but you don't want to change your articulation because that also changes the phrasing of your piece. So try to keep your articulations as much as you can. For the B flat minor etude, let's start with taking a look at measure 10 with the pickup. So this is where it says appassionato. I'm going to play this once as written and then with two different rhythms so that you can hear different ways of practicing it. This is going to be 16th note at 90. Another difficult spot is pick up to measure 12, all the way through 12 until the A flat. For this one, I'll do the same thing. I'll play it once at a slightly slower tempo, so I'll go at 16th equals 80, and then I'll do the long short rhythm and then the short long rhythm. So I'm always dividing the beat into two notes. Place is going to be from pickup into 15, full measure of 15, and then until the rest at 16. This is difficult because of the notes, because of the big jumps, but also because of the way this is slurred. I'm going to play for you from pickup to 15 into 16, first the way it's written, and then with the two rhythms that we've been doing, the short long and the long short. And then I'm going to offset the beat just like we did in G major. So now the click will come on the second note of every group of two instead of the first note. And that's doable here because all of these notes are 30-second notes, so you don't have any rhythms getting in the way. Is offsetting the beat, and I'm going to play this slower at 70 to the 16th, so you can really hear that the click is coming on the second note of a group of two, not the first note. practice your etudes in order to help you take the next step in playing these a little faster. Always play the difficult spots slowly with a metronome. And then once you have them under your fingers, try different rhythms. Try offsetting the beat. Try different groupings of the notes. But always try to keep your articulations exactly as written so that you don't have to deal with changing articulations and rhythms at the same time. Have fun practicing, and I'll see you next time.